All right, I'm going to start things off by showing you how to open an image file inside Photoshop just by double-clicking on it here at the Windows desktop. If you're looking to do the same thing from the Macintosh Finder, then go ahead and skip to the next movie. Now, the reason I start with this topic is because it used to be by far and away the #1 tech support question I would get. And it is confusing because Photoshop supports so many different file formats. If you count the various raw digital camera formats, it's more than 50 formats in all. Fortunately, for everyday use, you only really need to know about 4 of them. So here I am looking at the contents of the O1 Open folder that's available to those of you who have access to the exercise files, and I'm looking at thumbnail views of my images, which you can get by clicking on this little thumbnail icon in the bottom right corner. And by the way, you can scale those thumbnails by pressing the Control key and then using the scroll wheel on your mouse. So if I scroll down, then I'll reduce the size of the thumbnails. If I scroll up, I'll increase the size of my thumbnails. And that's once again with the Control key down. Notice that in addition to this file called Puffins, which we'll talk about in a later movie, we've got 4 files that are all called Welcome. How can 4 different files in the same folder have the exact same name? Well, they're actually welcome.jpg, .ping, .psd, and .tiff. It's just that right now I'm not seeing the extensions. If you're not seeing the extensions either, you want to see them by clicking on the word View up here in this folder menu, and then you want to go over to this guy right here, File Name Extensions, and turn it on, at which point you will see the extensions like so. All right, so I'm going to start things off by double-clicking on this file right here, welcome.tiff. Now, in my case, it happens to open up inside Photoshop. If it doesn't open in Photoshop for you, I'll show you how to solve that problem in just a moment. But you'll know whether you've got Photoshop open or not by the appearance of this tiny little PS icon up here in the top left corner of the screen. Now, notice that my panels are a little bit of a mess at this point, and if yours look the same way, where you have this enormous color field and your layers panel is squished down here at the bottom, here's what I recommend you do. Very quickly, right-click on Learn, on the Learn tab right here, and choose Close. You can always bring it back by choosing the Learn command from the Window menu, this guy right here, but I assure you, we're going to do more learning in this course than you will get from that panel. All right, the next thing you want to do is go ahead and switch to the Adjustments panel right there, and then click on the Layers tab down here at the bottom in order to expand the Layers panel, which is an essential panel inside this program. And then notice this horizontal bar right here. You can drag it over to the right in order to give yourself a lot more room on screen to work. And then you can go ahead and double-click on the Adjustments tab in order to hide that panel. All right, so that's what you want to have happen. You want the file to open up inside the most powerful image editing application ever made, Photoshop. All right, so let's check out the other files. I'll go ahead and click on this minimize icon in order to minimize Photoshop so that we can see the folder once again. And I'll double click on the JPEG file right here. And notice, at least where this system is concerned, that the image opens up inside Microsoft's Photos, which is an interesting little utility, but it's not even sort of as powerful as Photoshop. This is not the behavior we want. So go ahead and close out like so. And then what you want to do is right-click on the file in order to bring up the shortcut menu, choose Open With, and then select this guy, Choose Another App. And now you may or may not see Photoshop. If you don't, as I don't, then you want to scroll down using the scroll wheel on your mouse and click on More Apps right there. And then you want to scroll down until you find the most recent version of Adobe Photoshop. And so for me, it's Photoshop 2020. If you're working in Photoshop 2025 or something like that, this is still what you want, the most recent version of the software. And then turn on this checkbox, always use this app to open JPEG files and click OK. And that will open the image inside Photoshop as we're seeing right here. All right, now let's check out the ping file, which is this guy right here. So just in case you're wondering what the purpose of these file formats is, JPEG is for flat photographic images, ping is for web and device images, TIFF is for print production, is the way it typically sorts out. All right, so I'll go ahead and double click on the ping file, and this time Windows doesn't even know what to do. In which case, just go ahead and scroll down, find more apps if you're not seeing Photoshop, and then go ahead and scroll down the list until you do see the most recent version of Photoshop, and go ahead and click OK, and that will open the image inside Photoshop once again. All right, I'm going to hide Photoshop, and I just want to confirm that that's going to work because there was no checkbox to say always do this. So I'm going to double click on the ping file again. And this time, notice it says Photoshop 2020 right there, but it didn't ask me if this is what I want to do in the future. So I'm going to press the escape key, and I'm going to right click on this file once again, choose open with, choose another app, and then just make sure that you select Adobe Photoshop 2020 and you turn on this checkbox so that in the future, Windows doesn't even ask you. It just does what you want. All right, finally, let's check out the PSD file. We're not seeing a preview of this file here under Windows because I didn't save a preview along with the file, and we'll see what all this looks like when I show you how to save these various file formats in a future chapter. PSD stands for Photoshop Document, and it's the one file format that supports layers. So I'll go ahead and double click on that one. It should automatically open inside Photoshop as we're seeing here. But notice over here in the layers panel, these little T's with these caution icons, that tells us that we're missing fonts. And so as a result, I get this missing fonts warning. Then I'll click next. And now it's asking me, hey, do you want to resolve any of these font problems? In another application, you would have to resolve missing fonts. In Photoshop, you don't. And so I'm going to click Don't Resolve in this case. And I'm just zooming in by pressing Control+, by the way. And now I'm going to grab the zoom tool, which you can get by pressing the Z key, as indicated by that tooltip right there. And now I'm just going to click on the words one-on-one a couple of times. And if you notice here in the layers panel, this layer right here, one-on-one, it's telling me that that is one of the missing fonts. And yet the text looks beautiful on screen. And that's because Photoshop saves a pixel preview of every text layer you create. So as long as you don't edit this text, you don't need access to that font. And that's how you set things up so that you can open an image file inside Photoshop just by double-clicking on the file's icon at the Windows desktop.